And what I really like about this story and the Marjorie Taylor Greene story, and also the Capitol Hill story, is so this thing in Afghanistan, well, that's just the leadership, right? The rank and file don't do that. Listen, those Guam National Guard, those were volunteers, right? They got on a bus and a plane to go from Guam all the way to DC to intimidate a congressperson, right? All those National Guardsmen in DC were actively selected for their political loyalty. There were orders given to make sure not to take any Republicans or people who were associated with, QAnon or Oath Keepers or whatever movement. So this is in the officer corps, which, as I've discussed, the United States government, Department of Defense officer corps is controlled by Democrats. And enlisted men are majority Republican, but just barely. I'm not going to say anything, dear listeners, about how I feel about the military, but I want to tell you this. The military sure as fuck hates you. That's all I have to say about that.
Does this technically or not, what's the word, transition into our other DoD story?
It does. And that's a shame because it's out of order, like strongly out of order.
But do you want to put it in order?
Yeah.
Because your point just goes right into it.
So we're going to keep on pounding on the Department of Defense. Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has stumbled upon...
Speaking of women in the military,
yeah, right.
Away.
Tucker Carlson stumbled across the greatest info hazard in the history of the Defense Department since its founding in like 1938 or 37, right? Woke generals. I love it. A few weeks ago, Joe Biden was talking about how he was modernizing the military, but in true Orwellian speak, modernizing the military means making it less effective by reducing the fitness standard. In this case, to accommodate not only women, but pregnant women. He talked about maternity flight suits. And then Tucker Carlson made fun of this and said, wow, can you believe Joe Biden is trying to have pregnant pilots, right? And he just laughed about it for a minute and then just talked about, how China is not doing any of this woke stuff and just talked about them for a while.
China has an initiative to basically it's like a pro-masculinity initiative, try to toughen up their boys into men.
Right. So that was Tucker's angle on that one.
While we're doing the opposite.
You'd think that would be that, but actually the Department of Defense doubled down on it.
That's all these people ever know how to do.
Well, actually,
is double down and overplay their hand.
Let me read this article from Military Times. Senior leaders dunk on Tucker Carlson's misogynistic comments about maternity flight suit.
Tucker Carlson gets nay-nayed by military brass.
Ready? From defense.gov, press secretary smites host that dissed diversity in U.S. military. Smite, thank God, again, to put an end to fascism, thank God that the the press secretary of the United States government is pledged to smite anyone who dares criticize the military's political initiatives. Now, what's amazing here is also the straw man that happened, because the photo that this article uses is a bunch of black women who graduated from West Point, and they're all posing with their swords on the steps, as if Tucker Carlson had some kind of problem with blacks being in the army, even though we've been in the army for, its inception, right? And then they said also, Tucker Carlson doesn't believe that women should serve in the armed forces. Now, I want all of our listeners to really think about it. If you believe that no sane country should have women in its armed forces, the Defense Department will make fun of you. You are the weird one. You are the aberration. If you think that the purpose of the military is to win wars, if you think that women have no place in combat, the Defense Department thinks that you are a relic.
Not just a relic, because a relic would be ignored. They think you're an enemy.
Yes. And so Tucker Carlson went back on it, and he did a whole segment woke generals. And he just talked about all of these, like the military has been a tool of social engineering. I'd say since like the Vietnam War, I would say it has been, a way for the United States government to field test its commitment to diversity, inclusion, and equity. But woke generals is one of those amazing things that if you're an enlisted person, it's probably the most demoralizing thing you can hear, right? It doesn't demoralize the average enlisted person to hear me say, I'm not saying what I feel about the military, but the military sure as fuck hates me. And it's not info hazard when Republicans say, wow, you swore to defend America, but you're in Barack Obama's army or you're in Joe Biden's army. Because what do these people say? Well, I swore to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And part of, being a sane country is having an apolitical military, right, that is professional and just does what it's told. Now, what is our professional apolitical military doing? Intimidating congressmen, right, putting women in maternity flight suits and subverting peace deals made by the president. That's our apolitical professional military class. Oh, and also dunking on reporters. You can't make soldiers feel bad for supporting a Democrat, but it absolutely undermines morale for Tucker Carlson to say, your officer corps is not just on the left. You don't have a general who happens to be a Democrat. You have woke general. You have woke, far left, shitlib officers. You're following the orders of crazy people. I think that's great. That's a really great talking point, and I'm amazed that Tucker would come up with an argument that good. And I think he would never have come up with an argument that good, or rather, he never would have voiced an argument that good out loud if it weren't for the fact that the Department of Defense actually engaged in the back and forth. And it goes to show how easy it is for conservatives to think of good arguments, because all they need to do is just feel personally offended, and they'll go straight for the jugular.
This whole thing is just, it's more of the whole march to the institutions thing that just bores me so much, but I'm torn. On the one hand, it's obviously important because these are the people that are going to be rounding us up. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, it bores me to tears because it's just more of the same. All of our institutions are corrupted by these ideologically possessed woke scolds and this new totalitarian mindset. Which, sure, but, what has it done for me lately,
Yeah. Then the Defense Department, again, I think it was the U.S. Air Force Command Twitter tweeted, like, hey, Tucker, why don't you talk to us when you've served a full tour of duty while you're pregnant? Now, first of all, a tour is a lot more than 9 months. But again, I want you to think about this, dear listener. The military is proud to have pregnant members. The military, it shoots people. It drops bombs on people. It is the long arm of state violence. Just think about what war is. Think about what a Defense Department is for. And think about a society. Think about an agency that makes fun of you for thinking pregnant women shouldn't be involved in it. Nobody should be involved in war, obviously. But you know who's super double on every practical and ethical level definitely shouldn't be in war? Pregnant women. Then the Defense Department apologized for that. They didn't apologize even to Tucker. They didn't apologize for attacking him. Rather, they apologized for their unprofessional tone in another tweet.
Yeah, sorry we said we dunked on you.
Yeah, like, sorry, it's unprofessional for us to use, this kind of epic clapback yes queen tone on an official DoD Twitter account.
Which is funny because just the fact that they would do such a thing says all you need to say. The retraction of the apology doesn't say anything. What says something is the fact that they would do that.
Yes.
It's like it in any of these things. It's like, your friend calls you the N-word. It's like, then he says, hey, sorry about that. I was just mad.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd go, okay, you were mad, but like the fact that you did that, the fact that that's where you went when raises a red flag,
Yes. And you didn't even pay me the $10 for the N-word pass. So that's really unforgivable. And then Tucker then did one last segment. I might just do this for the excerpt. He says, I've had family members call me concerned that I've been targeted by the Defense Department is part of apparently Operation Silence the talk show hosts. But then I thought, I'm not afraid, because if the Defense Department treats me anything like the way they did the Taliban, they'll start giving me weapons and money for free. Some listeners who are particularly clever will point out, Marcel, weren't you just saying that the Defense Department was staging provocations against the Taliban, but now you're also laughing at the idea that the Defense Department is too soft on the Taliban? And what you need to understand is, it's not that my criticism is jumbled, it's that the Defense Department is jumbled, because the Defense Department stages provocations against enemies that it then provides with free guns to fight it. I'm not weird for making fun of both. They're weird for fucking doing both.
And anyone who wants to understand why they're doing both, I just read a book by Anthony Sutton, the late Anthony Sutton, called America's Secret Establishment, An Introduction to the Order of Skull and Bones, which has a whole section on the sort of Hegelian thesis, antithesis, to create synthesis, dialectical approach to changing the world through managed conflict.
Yeah, also, if that sounded like that made no sense, you can also just read Fool's Errand by Scott Horton. Or Enough Already by Scott Horton. Yeah, just want to reiterate, I'm not saying that I hate the Defense Department or that you should hate the Defense Department. All I'm saying is the Defense Department
I think you mean to say is
hates you. That's what I'm saying. The Defense Department hates you. All I'm saying is they hate you. However you feel about the troops, however you feel about the generals, however you feel about the wars, understand that the Defense Department stages provocations on terrorists, gives them weapons, it hates you, and it thinks you're a fucking freak for thinking that we shouldn't have pregnant pilots.
My favorite is the people who, they're like, clapback at Tucker was like, he acts like Joe Biden is making us have pregnant pilots. We've had pregnant women in the military for a lot longer than Joe Biden. We already have pregnant fatigues. This was already in the pipeline. So snap, snap, snap. And I think even if he was making a partisan point, if anything, his point would be more akin to that just because we have these things, whatever, fine. But the fact that the president's holding a giant press conference where this is the talking point, is about how we're giving women more haircut styles and we're going to have pregnancy flight suits, that these are our priorities.
God, that was the thing that conservatives... Sorry, I touched the microphone. That was a thing that conservatives were fixated on, was the relaxation of haircut standards. I saw a post complaining about the double standard that in the military, men can't have cornrows, but women can. This is where Republicans are. Like, could you imagine being the kind of person that hears all this shit and it's like, yo, why is it that women can wear cornrows and men can't? Isn't that racist and sexist? It's a double standard. This is where Republicans are. Okay? The Capitol building was under military garrison for weeks.
Is it not still?
No, they're taking down the barbed wire.
Okay.
The Capitol building was under armed occupation for weeks. You have members of the National Guard intimidating Republican congressmen. You have the Department of Defense actively harassing civilian reporters, and Republicans are upset about double standards in the haircuts. It just makes me a little bit upset. Just
a little bit.
Just a little bit. And again, they hate you, right? Whatever you think about them, they hate you. And if you're unconvinced for whatever reason, I respected this about Joe Biden a lot during the campaign, was whenever people would ask him questions, he would say, if you believe that, then don't vote for me. And like, if you are insufficiently convinced that the Defense Department is run by people that despise the kind of person I want listening to this podcast, then you shouldn't be listening to the podcast. Maybe Dan can ask you to stay kindly, right? But like, I'm not.
Yeah, maybe I could.
Right?
Maybe I would.
Maybe you would.
But let's move on.
Moving on. I think I'm going to push aside this thing about multiracial whiteness to just, it's evergreen, so we can just do that another time. Oh, speaking of Republicans and their priorities. So as you remember, last episode, we discussed Texas Governor Greg Abbott and how he was reopening Texas. when Republican governors open up their